Hello, my littles. Welcome to Mammy's Corner, and I'm Mammy. But you already knew that, didn't you? Oh my goodness, you're so cool. All right, it is time to do our affirmations, which are these down here. Are you ready? Are you ready to shout them out loud? Because you are worthy, you are valuable. Are you ready? Let's say it out loud. I am loved. Is that as loud as you can go? Come on, my littles, louder. I am loved. Good job. Now, who loves you? God loves you. Who else? Mammy loves you. And don't you forget it. All right, next one. Ready? I am good. Are you good? Can you do it louder than that? Come on, ready? I am good. Good job. Mammy's voice cracked, didn't it? All right, let's do the last one. I am kind. Louder than that, my littles. Ready? I am kind. Good job, because you are good and kind. Now, Mammy is still into this book here, and this one's going to be about the Christmas kitten story. But before we get going on that, make sure you're in your favorite chair. You've got a favorite blanket or a favorite pillow, favorite stuffy, or maybe your favorite person you want to cuddle with, like mommy or daddy. Or Mammy. You want to cuddle with Mammy? Oh, that's so sweet. All right, let's get ready. Oh, don't forget, make sure you hit the thumbs up. Mammy likes it when you like my videos. Are you ready? Are you ready? All right, let's get started. We're going to read to you about the Christmas Day kitten. Ah, look at that. Christmas can never go by without my remembering a certain little cat. I first saw her when I called to see one of Mrs. Pickering's much-loved basset hounds. Whoa, look at that beautiful house. I looked in some surprise at the furry creature moving quietly down the hall. "No, I didn't know you had a cat," I said to Mrs. Pickering, who was a plumpish, pleasant-faced woman. "We haven't, really. Debbie is a stray. She comes here 2 or 3 times a week, and we give her some food. I don't know where she lives." "Do you ever get the feeling that she wants to stay with you?" I asked. "No," Mrs. Pickering shook her head. "She's a timid little thing, just creeps in, has some food, then slips away. She doesn't seem to want to let me help her in any way." I looked at the tabby cat again. "But she isn't just having food today." "It's a funny thing, but every now and again she pops through into the sitting room and sits by the fire for a few minutes. It's as though she is giving herself a treat." Wow, that is a nice cozy little fire, isn't it? Oh my goodness, I love it. Oh, look, there's some basset hounds, and there's the kitty. The little kitty was sitting very upright on the thick rug which lay in front of the fireplace, in which the coals glowed and flamed. The 3 basset hounds, there's 3? Do you see 3 basset hounds? Those are dogs. I know there's 1, but isn't this 2? No, there's 2 heads. There's 3. Oh my goodness. Mammy almost didn't see that. It's a good thing you did. Oh my goodness. The 3 bassets were already lying there, but they seemed used to Debbie because 2 of them sniffed her in a bored manner, and the 3rd merely cocked a sleepy eye at her before flopping back to sleep. Debbie made no effort to curl up or wash herself or do anything other than gaze quietly ahead. This was obviously a special event in her life. A treat. Do you think she's getting warm, my littles? I mean, look at her. Look at that fire. You think she's getting warm? Yeah, me too. Then suddenly she turned and crept from the room without a sound and was gone. "That's just the way it is with Debbie," said Mrs. Pickering, laughing. "She never stays more than 10 minutes or so, then she's off." I often visited the Pickering home, and I always looked out for the little cat. On one occasion, I spotted her nibbling daintily from a saucer at the kitchen door. As I watched, she turned and almost floated on light footsteps into the hall, then through into the sitting room. Debbie settled herself in the middle of the pile of basset hounds in her usual way, upright, still, and gazing to the glowing fire. This time I tried to make friends with her, but she leaned away as I stretched out my hand. However, I talked to her softly, and I managed to stroke her cheek with one finger. "Ah, look at that." Then it was time for her to go, and once outside the house, she jumped up onto the stone wall and down the other side. The last I saw was the little tabby figure flitting away across the grassy field. "I wonder where she goes," I murmured. "That's something we've never been able to find out," said Mrs. Pickering. "Whoa, look how beautiful that is. Wow." It was 3 months later that I next heard from Mrs. Pickering, and it happened to be Christmas morning. "I'm so sorry to bother you today of all days," said Mrs. Pickering apologetically. "Don't worry at all," I said. "Which of the dogs needs attention?" "It's not the dogs. It's Debbie. She's come to the house and there's something wrong. Please, come quickly." I drove through the empty market square. The snow was thick on the road and on the roofs of the surrounding houses. The shops were closed, but the pretty colored lights of the Christmas trees winked in the windows. Wow, look at all that snow. Do you have snow where you're at in the wintertime? Sometimes Mamie gets it, but not very often. Mrs. Pickering's house was beautifully decorated with tinsel and holly, and the rich smell of turkey and sage and onion stuffing wafted from the kitchen. But she had a very worried look on her face as she led me through to the sitting room. Debbie was there, but she wasn't sitting upright in her usual position. She was laying quite still, and huddled close to her lay a tiny kitten. I looked down in amazement. "What have we got here?" "It's the strangest thing," Mrs. Pickering replied. "I haven't seen her for several weeks, and then she came in about 2 hours ago, staggering to the kitchen, and she was carrying the kitten in her mouth. She brought it in here and laid it on the rug. Almost immediately I could see that she wasn't well. Then she lay down like this, and she hasn't moved since." "Oh, no. I wonder what's wrong with poor Debbie." "Oh." I knelt on the rug and passed my hand over Debbie's body, which Mrs. Pickering had placed on a piece of sheet. She was very, very thin, and her coat was dirty. I knew that she didn't have long to live. "Is she ill, Mr. Herriot?" asked Mrs. Pickering in a trembling voice. Yes, I'm afraid so. But I don't think she's in any pain." Mrs. Pickering looked at me, and I saw there were tears in her eyes. Then she knelt beside Debbie and stroked the cat's head while the tears fell on the dirty fur. "Oh, that's sad." "Oh, the poor thing. I should have done more for her." I spoke gently. "Nobody could have done more than you. Nobody could have been kinder. And see, she's brought her kitten to you, hasn't she?" "Yes, you are right. She has." Mrs. Pickering reached out and lifted the tiny bedraggled kitten. "Isn't it strange? Debbie knew she was dying, so she brought her kitten here. And on Christmas Day." I bent down and put my hand on Debbie's heart. There was no beat. "I'm afraid she has died." I lifted the feather-light body, wrapped it in a piece of sheet, and took it out to the car. "Oh, that's sad. I didn't like that story." When I came back, Mrs. Pickering was still stroking the kitten. The tears had dried, and she was bright-eyed as she looked at me. "I've never had a cat before," she said. I smiled. "Well, it looks as though you've got one now." "What do you think? Think that kitten likes her?" "Yeah, me too." And she certainly had. The kitten grew rapidly into a sleek, handsome, and bouncy tabby cat, and Mrs. Pickering called him Buster. He wasn't timid like his little mother, and he lived like a king. And with the ornate collar he always wore, looked like one too. Look, what's he looking at? Do you want to see? He's looking at a snail. Oh my goodness. Silly kitty. I watched him grow up with delight, but the occasion that always stays in my mind was the following Christmas Day, a year after his arrival. I was on my way home after visiting a farmer with a sick cow, and I was looking forward to my Christmas dinner. Mrs. Pickering was at the front door when I passed her house, and I heard her call out, "Merry Christmas, Mr. Herriot. Come in and have a drink to warm you up." I had a little time to spare, so I stopped the car and went in. In the house, there was all the festival cheer of last year and the same glorious whiff of sage and onion stuffing, but this year there was no sorrow. There was Buster. Ah, look at the kitty cat. He was darting up to each of the basset hounds in turn, ears pricked, eyes twinkling, dabbing a paw at them, and then streaking away. Oh my goodness, he was smacking them to play, huh? Mrs. Pinkering laughed. Buster does tease them so. He gives them no peace. And she was right. For a long time, the dogs had led a rather sedate life, gentle walks with their mistress, plenty of good food, and long snoring sessions on the rugs and armchairs. Then Buster arrived. He was now dancing up to the youngest dog again, head on one paw, asking him to play. When he started boxing with both paws, it was too much for the basset, who rolled over with the cat in a wrestling game. Come into the garden, said Mrs. Pickering. I want to show you something. She lifted a hardware ball from the sideboard, and we went outside. She threw the ball across the lawn, and Buster bounded after it over the frosty grass, his tabby coat gleaming in the sun. He seized the ball in his mouth, brought it back to the mistress, dropped it at her feet, and waited. Mrs. Pickering threw it again, and again Buster brought it back. What? How crazy is that a cat chases a ball? Oh my goodness. I've seen dogs do that, but not kitty cats. How about you, my littles? Have you seen kitty cats do that? Oh, how silly. I gasped. A retriever cat? The Bassets looked on unimpressed. Nothing would ever make them chase a ball. But Buster did it again and again and again, as though he would never tire of it. Mrs. Pinkering turned to me. Have you ever seen anything like that? No, I replied. He is a most remarkable cat. Oh my goodness. And look at the Basset hounds. They're like, nope. I'm not going to chase a ball. Like, silly dogs. We went back into the house, where she held Buster close to her, laughing as the big cat purred loudly. Looking at him, so healthy and contented, I remembered his mother, who had carried her tiny kitten to the only place of comfort and warmth that she had ever known. Mrs. Pinkering was thinking the same thing, because she turned to me, and although she was smiling, her eyes were thoughtful. Debbie would be pleased, she said. I nodded. Yes, she would. It was just a year ago today she brought him in, wasn't it? That's right, she hugged Buster again. The best Christmas present I've ever had. Ah, the end. You think Buster likes it there? Yeah, me too. Wow, what a good story that was. I hope you liked it. There were some sad parts in there, made Mammy sad. Did it make you sad? Just about cried. All right, so this was a Christmas Day kitten story. I hope you liked it. But remember, just because a kitten doesn't let your cat, in Debbie's case, Debbie was a full-grown cat, didn't let her get petted by the mistress, by Mrs. Pinkering, doesn't mean she didn't know that she loved her. Just because I can't hug you right now doesn't mean I don't love you, because I love you. All right, so this is the end. So what do? I say, that's right, I say, who loves you? God loves you. That's right, who else loves you? Mammy loves you, but shh, Mammy loves you bestest. Until next time, my littles, be good and be kind. Big hugs.